Hi, my name is Sarah, and this is Raising Neurodivergent Children. Okay, first, what is neurodiversity? The term neurodiversity is used to describe individuals who have differences in the ways that they navigate societally constructed concepts and systems. Neurodiversity is most commonly used to describe those who are autistic or have ADHD. Neurodiversity can also be used to refer to sensory differences, intellectual development disorders, learning disabilities or differences, Tourette's syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder, Down syndrome, or other things as well. So, how does neurodiversity present? Since each person is unique, neurodiversity looks different in every individual. So often, neurodivergent individuals have thought patterns, emotions, and behaviors that diverge from what is usually considered to be typical by society. So I have three of the top differences that are usually apparent in neurodiverse individuals. So, sensory processing differences, behavior, communication, and social differences, and learning differences. But you don't have to have all of these to be neurodivergent, these are just the most common. So, within these three categories, there are other categories that have hyperspecifics that we're not going to go into here, but feel free to look into them on your own. I could talk about this for 1,000 years, but I'm not going to. So, some of these differences are hypersensitivity, sensation seeking or avoidance tendencies, sensory overwhelm, learning pace differences, so either faster or slower, developmental variations, different social manifestations, and masking. Wah, wah. So, what difficulties do neurodivergent children face? This is not a comprehensive list, and there are many other difficulties, but some of the difficulties that they face can be sensory and internal overwhelm, anxiety, emotional regulation struggles, being misunderstood, verbal barriers, confusion, the burden of masking, fatigue, pervasive shame, social challenges, systemic and diagnostic barriers, societal expectations, and late diagnosis for girls. So, what can I do if I think my child is neurodivergent? The first thing you can do for anyone, not just those who think they have a child who's neurodivergent, is learn about neurodiversity. Not only can learning about neurodiversity help you to recognize neurodiversity in your own child, it can also help you to recognize it in others. When you understand how a person's brain works, you can communicate with them and support them in a much more effective way. Next, you can approach neurodiversity through an affirming lens. Neurodiversity affirming practice views neurodivergence as a difference rather than a deficit. And this does not mean that disabilities associated with neurodivergence are ignored. Rather, disabilities are recognized and validated just while focusing on the unique strengths of the neurodivergent person. So, this means that regardless of the difficulties a child may face, neurodiversity is never viewed as a mistake, as something that needs to be cured or fixed, or as something that makes them less than. I liked this image of what embracing neurodiversity looks like. And so some of the things you can do are avoid pathologizing language, have more support talk rather than cure talk, because we don't want to be cured. We want to be embraced. Decentering neurotypical narratives about neurodivergence, aka neurodiversity doesn't need to be fixed. Confronting internalized ableism, considering intersectionality, and not glorifying neurodivergence as a superpower. That's a really important thing because it invalidates the experience of neurodivergent people and the difficulties that are faced when we say neurodiversity is a superpower. Next, if you think your child is neurodivergent, seek a diagnosis. Seeking a diagnosis for your child can allow them to access services and interventions that allow for more independence later in life. can promote a positive identity and combat shame, can help you and your child to understand their behavior, can help you know how to better advocate for your child, and can help you, if you are a parent, to find a community for support. You can also help your child find support in a community if their heart desires. In order to view your child in a neurodiversity affirming way, it is really important to adjust your expectations. So some ways that you can do that is reject the fitting in standard. Love the unique child that you have and allow them to be authentic. And then shift the burden to society. It's not your child who needs to change, it is society's expectations. And shift fixing to understanding. Instead of trying to fix your child's behavior, ask yourself what they are trying to communicate with you. Next, recognize your own feelings. Often, parents of neurodivergent children may feel ashamed or other feelings about their child's behavior. Then, to protect their child from shame or other feelings from others, they may teach their child to mask, aka to hide their authentic self. So, when a parent has good intentions and is teaching a child to mask, this can lead the child to believe that something is wrong with them. And a parent who feels ashamed of their child is not a horrible person. It's just a feeling. And it's important to practice self-acceptance, compassion, and respect to give yourself the grace to feel those things while also accepting that neurodiversity is a part of who your child is. You can feel shame and also allow your child to be authentic. Another thing to do is seek services to help your child. Through an affirming lens, therapy and services are not accessed to make a child neurotypical. These are accessed to prevent or to help with depression, anxiety, poor self-worth, trauma, regulation struggles, social navigation, and just life adjustment challenges. And allowing your child to access services and interventions can allow for more independence later in life. And I love this quote from one of the websites, which was, "The purpose of these services is not to make your child neurotypical." Ask the community. Seek out adults who share your child's neurotype and listen to them. So neurodivergent children grow into neurodivergent adults. So we may as well listen to neurodivergent adults on what your child actually needs rather than neurotypical adults who may not know exactly what your child needs. And an example of this is that neurodivergent people often really dislike person-first language. So for example, person-first language, you would say something like, it's a person with autism instead of autistic person. And usually people who are neurodivergent feel like harmed by person-first language. It feels like very invalidating. And so there's that one. And then there's also ABA therapy. If it is done in a way that's non-affirming, where they're trying to turn the neurodivergent person into a neurotypical person, it can lead to PTSD and be very harmful. So those are some examples. And a great thing to do is ask neurodivergent adults for tips. Something like, what helped you when you were young? What was harmful to you? Look for your child's strengths. By looking for your child's unique strengths, you can empower them to harness their potential. This is a strength-based approach, and it is wonderful. This practice can also promote growth, self-discovery, and a positive parent-child relationship. If you have a neurodivergent child, meet a neurodivergent child, or a neurodivergent adult, remember to celebrate them. Neurodivergent people are wonderful. Thanks for coming to my presentation. Party on, everybody.